Hello and welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michele Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Today we'll be talking with Scott MacKenzie, the CEO of one of the Caribbean's hottest internet properties, Cloud Carib. Although you might not have heard of the firm before, Cloud Carib has been around since about 2011 and is headquartered in the Bahamas, where it offers a broad range of cloud and managed services. It has received a number of awards over the years. Most recently in 2017, it was ranked within the top 50 cloud services providers worldwide by the Channel Future's Talking Cloud 100 report. Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining us for the ICT Pulse podcast.
Hi, Michele. Thanks very much for having me.
Okay, so you are the CEO of Cloud Carib, which is, I guess, a cloud-based operation in the Bahamas. Tell us about Cloud Carib and what are the services it offers?
Yes, Cloud Carib is the region's premier provider of trusted cloud and managed services. So the company focuses on a range of bespoke private cloud offerings and hybrid cloud services. So hybrid cloud is basically we deploy our equipment in data centers throughout the region, and then customers consume services in any one of the region's facilities or a combination thereof. And private cloud is where we actually either on customers' sites, if they have data centers that sort of meet a tier 2, tier 3 specification, or carriers, we look at carriers and then build out private clouds for them. So basically it's putting Amazon inside a data center for a client, that's a private cloud, or us leveraging our infrastructure would be equivalent to Amazon or Azure, but within the region, within the Caribbean.
Excellent. So, and because I guess you said bespoke, this is not services that people can just go online and just decide what they want. I would assume that, one of your representatives would at least seek to understand the client's need and ensure that what they want matches what you all can provide.
Yes, that's 100%. It's very different from the region's perspective. So in the managed services and cloud space, we actually provide the design and build functions typically as free of charge or based on the setup fees included in the service. So where we make our revenue is on the operate and maintain. So customers can always be confident that what our solutions engineers provide to them for a quote will not only meet their needs, it will protect their interests because everything that we sell is backed by commercial service level agreements and our sort of default is 99.9% uptime. So we have to keep the client service up over the entire month with no outage exceeding 42 minutes or they don't pay a dime.
Oh, wow. That is impressive. So
that's our starting point. So from that, we can go all the way up to commercial agreements of 100% uptime.
Oh, excellent. I know that there are other, companies offering similar services to Cloud Carib. So, but who are some of the competitors you believe?
Yeah, so really the competitors that exist in the industry are generally the carriers that have bolted on managed services to their business. Typically, we don't see them as direct competition, and we don't really see any direct competition that exists today within the Caribbean because the companies that operate, that compete with us, don't really do it directly because they're either coming at it from a VAR systems integration perspective, and their focus is making money off of the resale of equipment, or they're carriers where the majority of their revenue comes from network connectivity. And both of those industries don't really focus on the services that we focus on. So we focus on highly standardized, ISO compliant services, and not based on products like a RSI or network like a carrier.
Understood. Now, when I was doing my research on Cloud Carib, I came across this phrase, white glove service guarantee. So what does that mean? I thought it was, it's a very unique term. I mean, we have kind of heard of white glove services in other contexts, but what would it mean?
Yes, so it's a marketing play to basically let people know that we really care, and it all sort of starts with that commercial SLA, right? So by us having the confidence to design a service and sell it to a client, knowing that it cannot be down any more than 42 minutes in an entire calendar month, that's a pretty strong starting point. But from there, for us, it goes to the level of service that clients get as well. So when our customers contact our command and control center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the person on the other end of the phone is a seasoned technical professional. So they never end up talking to somebody where they're just getting telling them about whatever it is, and somebody writes down notes in a ticket and then leaves it for a day or two. It's somebody that can actually help solve their problem right from day one. So that's where the white glove service comes in. It's sort of almost a concierge service where our technical professionals become an extension of our customers' technical teams.
Before we continue with Cloud Carib, in doing all of my research, I'm feeling the pressure to prepare well for this interview, and I started to look at you, and I said, but wow, Scott has this broad range of experience. He has worked in Canada, Europe, the Middle East, even China, but here he is in the Bahamas. And I just wanted to know, I'm just curious, how you ended up in the Bahamas, and why would you want to work in the Caribbean?
Yeah, I mean, so what drives me as a person is I like complex problems. And I was kind of happily semi-retired in China doing an application startup. And around 2012, I met the founder and CTO of Cloud Carib, Stelios Zerdakis, in China, actually. And I met him through a friend of mine, and he was the chief technology officer of a company in China that was focusing on yacht development. And when I met with him, we talked about, I talked about my life, he talked about his life, and he said he was doing a technology company in the Bahamas that he had just started. It's focusing on VAR, but he wants to push it into cloud services and build out a cloud in the Caribbean. And I said, well, that's amazing. That's a great idea, because there could be a USP because of the way the US market was developing, that it could actually stimulate growth. And anything to do with hosting or cloud, you need a USP to make it a financially viable model. So I said to him that it sounded very intriguing. So he asked me to sit on his advisory board, which I'd been doing now since around 2013. And at the end of 2015, he called an AGM and asked all the board members to fly down to the Bahamas and spend a week or two to go over how the companies had developed. And he called me up and he said, hey, why don't you bring your wife? So I said, okay, I'll bring my wife. And then he basically spent 2 weeks hard selling me on coming to help grow the company. And when I came down here, I met some of his key accounts, some of his customers, and they actually had some transformation problems, and that got me excited. Is I like very complex problems. I like state level type transformation problems. And after speaking with some of his clients, I got excited and said this could be an opportunity for us to do something very valuable. And that's what drove me down here. And so I told him I'd come on as the chief commercial officer and help him build out the commercial part of the business and the sales function. So we got all that going. And, we've been developing the company quite aggressively. So after we got to around the 50 head stage, I said, one of us needs to take the helm to drive us to the next level. And either we name you as CEO or myself. And he wants me to do it. So I said, okay, I'm happy to do that. So in December of 2017, I accepted the role of CEO. And here we are now growing the company in sort of phase 2.
Yes, that's an interesting journey, and I guess at this point in our lives and the world today, you almost never know where the opportunities are going to come from and where life is going to take you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, what I see is something very exciting. So in the Bahamas, the Caribbean as a whole, and even Latin America, I got to sort of witness the internet's development firsthand because my career since the early 90s has sort of been focused on that. And, what took North America, Canada, then US, like a 15, 20-year time frame to get to this point where everything's cloud focused and everything's cloud based. Like the Caribbean and Latin America is very much behind the curve, but it's not going to take that long to develop, right? It's not going to take that long to catch up because people are realizing there's massive leapfrog opportunities for transformation, especially at the government and state level. So, we're now starting to work with the CTU and whatnot. And we're really excited about that because we have governments that are actually interested in really transforming, their nation states. And there's huge opportunity for operational cost efficiencies, refining networks so that the government has one single network that's private, protected, secure, one sort of way of handling its application workloads without leveraging, outdated technologies. And then you get economies of scale because, instead of having 60 different ministries, each doing something different, when you can combine all of that together, all of that work and that effort, you don't lose knowledge and you gain so much value because you have everybody working to a common good.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I mean, currently I understand that Cloud Carib's customers tend to be the larger size organizations, corporates, and even government agencies. So let me ask you, what scope do you see for cloud adoption by SMEs?
We do. So Cloud Carib does focus on government and financial service and more larger scale clients. However, we do have some small companies. So we have some companies some small companies that have engaged us that, really are, 3 or 4 person small companies doing payroll or something. And they realize that it's more viable for them to put some cloud technology or some servers and technology in the cloud than it is to have it on-prem anymore. Because at the end of the day, instead of having that capital expenditure where you're paying $10,000 or $20,000 for a server, putting it in your office, and then you've got the risk of what happens if that one server breaks in your office, et cetera.
Yes.
For $200 or $300 a month, they can have the exact same sort of experience, but do it in the cloud. And now they've got somebody else that's responsible for backup and disaster recovery for them and all these other services that they can bolt on.
No, absolutely. Because oftentimes, SMEs really just want a service that, they can use. The tech support and all of the intricacies of trying to keep it up and running. I mean, many of them really don't have the bandwidth for that.
Yeah, and why would they want to at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you're a financial services company, why focus on technology?
Exactly.
It's like 20 years ago, I saw the world heading in the direction of computing becoming a utility, but now we're actually finally there. Like, now technology's matured to the point where things really are right on the cusp of becoming a true utility, where compute, storage, and network are resources that people turn on just like a light switch, opposed to, having this complexity about having to buy servers and hire IT people, et cetera, et cetera.
No, definitely. You did mention that I guess some of your clients are governments, I guess whether government agencies, ministries, departments, etc. But I know generally that governments tend to be concerned about jurisdiction issues and privacy issues with respect to where data is stored offshore. How has Cloud Carib been trying to allay those fears?
Right. So this is where so we work with any company on the same sort of problem to help them understand what their risk profile is as part of the solution design and then how best to structure it. So, any government or company has basically kind of public type workloads where you have like a web page, which is all public information that it's not sensitive. Now that information you can host anywhere and it doesn't really matter because it's not sensitive. Now, when it comes to, citizens' data, et cetera, that's where you need to be hyper cautious on how you handle that. So what we find is most of our larger customers and governments, what they want to do is that's where they go to private cloud. So what we do is we design, build, operate, and maintain an entire cloud platform in one or multiple data centers for them. So basically, we manage everything for them outside of their applications. So in that private cloud, they can host VAT applications or border control systems or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Because the infrastructure is running across multiple data centers, it's always on, it's highly available, and they can just consume it as a service. And from a data protection, they own the cloud itself. It's private. It's only them. There's nobody else inside that cloud. So that's private cloud. And for smaller governments or financial services companies, what they can do is we can encrypt workloads inside the hybrid cloud environment, if that's what they choose as well. So it really depends on the risk profile. So hypersensitive data we always recommend sort of that private kind of cloud play if it's a large government or it's very, very sensitive information. Hybrid works if you simply don't have the cash flow to be able to carry the costs of a private cloud, and if the sensitivity of the data isn't critical to the operation.
Okay, understood. I'm just thinking back. I mean, ICT Pulse was established in 2011, and I started writing about cloud computing from then. And at the time, it was being seen as the best thing since sliced bread. And then, a couple of years later, probably not so much. Maybe how it has certainly evolved over the last few years. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in cloud computing and cloud services?
Well, again, I think from a regional perspective, I think the region's quite a bit behind sort of, North America or even Western Europe in its adoption. But I think the interest is finally starting to pick up and people are realizing the benefits that they can gain from embracing it. I mean, for me, a perfect example is there's two sort of examples. So from a financial perspective, you've got a financial secretary or a CFO, and they always look at things from how do I manage the finances? And it's much easier to manage the finances if every month you're paying for your electricity and it's roughly the same cost every month, and you can manage it and manage those costs because you can forecast it. And that's sort of where cloud services fit in is you have a consumable utility-based model where they subscribe to a service and then they know all of their compute resource workloads are operationalized or bound as an OPEX expense. So, they know for $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month or $2,000 a month or $200 a month that it's always the same per month. So that allows them to OPEX their expense. So it allows them to forecast and budget much easier. So that's one aspect of it is the financial aspect or trend that people are realizing that it's easier to adopt. And the other one is the procurement lifecycle. On the procurement side of it, whether you're a small, medium-sized business or an enterprise or a government, if you have to go through the hurdles of procurement, what tends to happen is you get mired in red tape and you can spend 3 to 6 months just simply buying some servers. And by the time you buy them, and get your software and stuff installed on it, it could take you a year from when you wanted to start the project before it's actually live. In the cloud world, now you're talking 1 year can be condensed into 1 week. It's a utility. Mm-hmm. So people are starting to see that value as well. Now, the other positive of it is because it's a utility-based model, it actually helps to prevent and prohibit corruption because in capitalized expenses where you're buying assets and you have large volumes of it, it's very much easier to manipulate that process because, it's $1 million here or $1 million there changing hands. And it's easier for people to try to take a piece of that. Where if it's a utility-based model during the procurement cycle, it's a fixed expense on a monthly basis. You can't ask for a piece of that, right? So that's kind of what we see. We see the CFO, financial secretary side of it, where they see the value of moving from a capitalized expenditure to an operationalized expenditure, and then we see the procurement side of it, where it simply removes that red tape and obstacle from people trying to get work done by allowing them to do things in a much, much faster period of time. And I think what was the holdup in this region and maybe why it felt like it wasn't taking off as much, even though people started talking about it in 2011 and 12, sort of when Stelios launched Cloud Carib, is that people weren't ready for it and they were scared. And to be frank, people, we still talk to IT managers that are still very scared because, they see what we do as a replacement of them. And what we have to keep explaining to IT managers and directors is, you need to think of us as an extension of what you do, not a replacement, right? Because at the end of the day, all the stuff we do is the really boring stuff that none of them want to do anyways. It's like we're the mechanics. Like we change the oil, we keep everything running. But at the end of the day, they're driving the car. It's their content. It's their applications, right? And that's what they have to realize. They're the race car driver. We're the pit crew, right?
Yes, yes. I was also just wondering, with the sort of hurricane seasons we have had in the last, 2 to 3 years, I mean, has that really sort of spurred any additional interest in cloud? Do you all offer any sort of specific solutions or assistance to help companies with like disaster recovery or even business continuity?
Yeah, so I mean, so last year we were the Veeam Impact Partner of the Year for backup services. So
yes,
we offer managed backup service and managed replication, which is managed disaster recovery services. What's really interesting, actually, is we've noticed a trend about a month or two before the hurricane season starts within the region. There's a lot of interest,
yes.
and then for a few weeks after the hurricanes have sort of passed. So there's about a 3-month window every year where we probably double or triple the amount of phone calls in for people to want to consume service.
Okay.
Which it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because at the end of the day, things like backup and disaster recovery or business continuity, everybody should be thinking about every day, not just during the hurricane season.
No, absolutely. And I think my final question to you would be, if you were asked, what would be the 5 questions you would advise a firm to ask a company like Cloud Carib if they were looking to secure cloud services?
Yeah, I think the most important questions for any cloud service provider really is, do your services and solution match my needs? Do you have the human capacity, the capabilities to deliver the service that I subscribe to? Can you back up your design and your service offering with a commercial SLA that meets my requirements? Not every customer needs 3 nines or 100% uptime, but you've got to make sure that whoever you're subscribing to can meet that. I think the 4th question would be, if I do subscribe to the more advanced managed services, at what level do you stop? So again, it's just really making sure it's laser focusing on ensuring that the service provider can do everything they want, right? So, if the customer wants managed Oracle as a service, they have to know that company can be able to deliver that as a service. And then the other thing would be, what kind of value added services can you bolt into an offering if I was to go with you as a service provider? Because again, you want to make sure that the breadth and depth of services that the provider has in their portfolio can meet the long-term needs of your organization, not just today's needs.
These are excellent questions. And I mean, I think probably for those who might, eventually hear our interview, they will get a sense of the types of questions, because some of the people who probably will need to make the decisions will not be the technical persons, but at least, they may get a head start as to how they need to be thinking about cloud services and how they can assist their business or their organization.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a technology person buying technology services. It should always be a business driver, because technology is a tool. It's like a hammer, right? At the end of the day, you still need an architect to design the building and the carpenter to build it. So technology is the same thing. Technology is a tool that business people need to leverage to solve a business problem. So we always typically deal with CEOs and CFOs more so than CTOs when we actually sell our services.
And I think sometimes when one deals with the technical people too early, you get caught in the sort of technical aspects, and oftentimes those can be different from outputs and expectations of the business, of management. And it's good to probably start at that point where you're talking with, the CEO, the CFO, and work your way to the technical people who will actually, assist in implementing whatever the solutions one has agreed on.
I would totally agree. I think if you end up starting technology focused, you end up in the weeds worrying about things that are kind of irrelevant, because there's many different ways to solve the same problem. And the most important thing is to ensure that the solution meets the requirements of the business more than anything else.
Scott, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to have this discussion with me. It's been great. I only became aware of Cloud Carib, I guess a few months ago, just doing research. And it was just great that, we were able to connect initially and then, arrange this more fulsome interview today.
Well, Michele, I can't thank you enough for having me on and for talking to us. And we appreciate what you're doing to try to get the message out of what's available for technology services. I think the Caribbean region and Latin America is right on the verge of transformation, and anything that we can do to help people, that's what our objective is.
Thanks again.
Okay, thank you very much, Michele.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.